Hi, Senator Mike Hough here for our weekly update. Next week we're going to be hearing on a large piece of legislation called the Justice Reinvestment Effort. It's about a 150-page bill. Myself, members of law enforcement, judges, state's attorneys, defense attorneys, and a large group, Republicans, Democrats, spent all this summer coming up with the ideas conceptually for this. And the idea is actually based off of, believe it or not, what red states have been doing. So Maryland is actually following the lead of states like Texas and Mississippi and Utah, Georgia, reforms that they've implemented, which have saved taxpayer money as far as criminal justice spending, but also cut the crime levels there. So first, beginning with Texas in 2007, they faced a real prison overcrowding problem. We don't have that problem in Maryland, but they faced having to build 2 new prisons for $2 billion. And they looked at it, figured out they didn't have the money, but they looked at their system and they figured out there were a number of practices they were doing that just weren't smart. And so they ended up reforming their parole and probation and a number of their other programs. Long story short, looking back now, they've saved $2 billion by not having to build those prisons, and the crime rate in Texas is the lowest it's been since 1968. So looking at the lessons that a lot of these states have implemented, 31 other states ahead of us, we've looked at that now as Maryland is how can we save taxpayer money, how can we do things better, how can we lower the crime rate, and how can we treat people who have heroin addictions, mental health problems, and so many other things like that. So what the bill does, a lot of it is just dealing with nonviolent offenders in a different way, moving a lot of them for the first-time offenses into treatment instead of incarceration. It does better practices in parole and probation, holding people accountable when they do bad things, giving them incentives when they do good things, and on and on. And so what the legislation will ultimately end up doing is, over the next 5 years, it'll save $32 million. Those money we would have spent in incarceration, and instead we move that money into treating people with heroin addictions, treating people with mental health problems. And so we all know that heroin is a horrible epidemic in our communities right now. And we quite frankly don't have anywhere near the money that we need to treat it. In fact, it takes about 160 days to get somebody into treatment. And the rest of the numbers in our criminal justice system are just as bad. We spend $1 billion on a system that when we release somebody from prison, within 3 years, 40% of them are coming right back in. So we know that we need to do things smarter. We know that we can save taxpayer money and we can produce a better result. It's a really exciting effort because there's not a lot of times in Annapolis where you see a bipartisan coalition that's built around a data-driven approach, looking what other states have done right and trying to follow that model. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to rebalance our system, treating people with addiction problems, but also we're looking at violent offenders. People have murder and kidnapping and others, looking at increasing the penalties for those. So we have a more balanced system, a system where people don't fail as often. And it's going to be a big effort going forward this session, but I think it's something that could make a huge impact on the lives of our citizens.